Is there too much pressure on Muslims to accept Ahmadis as Muslims? That's the question I'm asking you today. Now, it was almost a fortnight ago that Assad Shah, an Ahmadi shopkeeper from Glasgow, was killed. You probably read about it, heard the story in the news, on TV, on the radio. Now, the man accused of murdering him said he carried out the killing because he believed Mr. Shah had disrespected Islam by claiming to be a prophet. Now, the Muslim Council of Britain has subsequently issued a statement clarifying their relationship with the Ahmadiyya community. Have you seen it? Go and have a look if you're online to read the full statement. Now, whilst they've stated that followers have the right to live free from discrimination or persecution, this is the crux of the argument. They've also said that Muslims should not be forced to class Ahmadis as Muslims if they do not wish to do so. What do you make of that statement? As a Muslim, do you feel pressure to class Ahmadis as Muslim? How do you feel about that? Perhaps you feel there's too much discrimination aimed towards that community and that needs to change. Or do you think that's wrong and, you may have an issue with their practices? If that's the case, get in touch. Now, if you don't know, Ahmadis believe that Muhammad was not the last prophet and that he will one day be succeeded. Is that a belief you take issue with? Or do you believe that everyone should have the right to practice religion free from discrimination? To have your say on our talking point this morning, there are loads of ways to get in touch. You can tweet. Thank you for listening to the BBC Asia Network phone-in show. I want you to get in touch with me this morning to give me your views on this question. Is there too much pressure on Muslims to accept Ahmadis as Muslim? Now, it was around 2 weeks ago that Assad Shah, an Ahmadi shopkeeper from Glasgow, was killed. Now, the man accused of murdering him said he carried out the killing because he believed Mr. Shah had disrespected Islam by claiming to be a prophet. Now, I don't want to talk about that case. That's ongoing. But the point is, the Muslim Council of Britain has issued a statement in response clarifying their relationship with the Ahmadiyya community. Now, they've stated that followers have the right to live free from discrimination or persecution, but also say Muslims should not be forced to class Ahmadis as Muslims if they do not wish to do so. What do you think about that statement? As a Muslim, do you feel pressure to class Ahmadis as Muslims? Maybe you feel there's too much discrimination aimed towards that community, so the statement isn't helpful. I don't know. You tell me. The number to call is 03459 440 445. You can text me 81869 or email nahal@bbc.co.uk. I'm going to go to my first guest, who is from the Muslim Council of Britain, Ibrahim Mogro. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Tina.
Hello. Now, tell me about this statement.
Well, allow me to first begin by utterly and totally condemning the tragic murder of Mr. Assad Shah in Glasgow. It is to be condemned without any ifs, without any buts. And if this Muslim person, the murderer, thinks that he has served Islam by doing so, then he is totally misguided. Secondly, to say that Ahmadis and people of all religious and non-religious backgrounds are our fellow human beings. And so we have to show compassion to fellow human beings. We have to respect one another despite our differences. We have to reach out to each other and live amicably with respect, allowing each other to make the choices we make. Our differences are purely and only theological.
Theological, yeah.
Absolutely. So that's what I really wanted to begin by saying.
OK, thank you for that. Just to bring in the next point, though. So, I've got your statement in front of me. So, of course, you condemn it. You express a freedom of belief and reject any attacks on the Ahmadi community, their property, their persons. They have the right to live free from discrimination or persecution. But then further down in the statement, you say you note the pressures mounting to describe this community as Muslim. Why do you believe that?
Well, we have observed for many years that the Ahmadiyya community have been persecuted, largely in places such as Pakistan and other Muslim-populated countries. But even here in the UK, we have come across incidents from time to time of an Ahmadiyya person being attacked, and that is totally unacceptable. At the same time, we've also noticed how Muslims are being called upon to accept the Ahmadiyya as part of the Muslim community, perhaps even as one group or one sect of Islam.
Called upon by who?
By Ahmadiyyas themselves, by perhaps sections of society, non-Muslim society, who perhaps are not well versed with what the theological positions are and why the world's Muslims take a position that they have taken about not including the Ahmadiyya community within the family of Islam. So we felt it was important for us to ensure that Muslims understand that our difference is purely theological and we have no right whatsoever to attack them, to harm them, to deny them their right to choose as they believe, and to live together in peace and in harmony. That is crucial here.
But you do reject them being described as Muslim, which is something they describe themselves as.
Indeed, and that is not something that Muslims have chosen to do themselves as individuals or as groups, but it comes from the theological position, the belief that anyone who believes in one God and in the finality of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as being God's last and final messenger, is part of the Muslim community. Anyone who does not subscribe to this belief cannot be included in the family of Islam.
At this point, yes, sorry to interrupt you, Ibrahim. At this point, I do want to bring in Abdul Bari Malik, who's a spokesman for the Ahmadi community in Bradford. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining our discussion.
You're most welcome.
What's your response to the Muslim Council of Britain's statement?
Right, Tina, first of all, let me thank Mr. Ibrahim for condemning the brutal murder of my good friend Asad Shah in Glasgow. The second thing is the part of Muslim Council of Britain's statement saying that Muslims are being pressured to accept that Ahmadis are Muslims is not acceptable at all.
Why?
I am Ahmadi Muslim because the Holy Prophet of Islam, Holy Prophet Muhammad, gave me the certificate. He said that anyone who declares, who recites the declaration of faith, kalma, and prays 5 times a day facing towards Mecca is a Muslim. That's what I do. And I don't need a certificate from Muslim Council of Britain or anybody else to say that I am a Muslim or not. Second thing is the Holy Quran also tells me, which is a holy book, holy scripture, that I am a Muslim. That is my certificate. I don't need any certificate from anybody else as long as I am praying and I am following the faith of Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I also believe that the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is the last messenger of God. I don't want anybody to tell me that I don't believe in that.
Ibrahim, can I get your response?
Yes, I would say to Brother Abdul Malik that if he believes that Muhammad is the last messenger of God, then he is a Muslim. Here it's not about issuing certificates. The Muslim Council of Britain cannot issue certificates on Muslim who is not Muslim. We're simply stating our understanding of the requirements of being a Muslim. And if there is any individual today who declares the oneness of God and believes in the finality of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, is a Muslim. And we should have no issues with that whatsoever. So if Mr. Abdul Malik has declared that Muhammad, peace be on him, is the last messenger of God, then he's a Muslim.
Okay, but what do you think about Abdul's point that the point in your statement, the Muslim Council of Britain, which is that pressures mounting to describe Ahmadis as Muslim is unacceptable?
Well, what we said is that Muslims cannot be forced to accept something that they theologically believe is not correct. So, for instance, if just for argument's sake, if there was pressure put on Muslims that they should eat pork, for example, it would not be right for Muslims to be forced to do something that goes against their beliefs. That may not be an appropriate example to use here, but in the same vein, if Muslims believe that belief in the finality of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him's messengerhood and prophethood is a fundamental tenet of the faith, then we cannot be forced to accept people who don't subscribe to that. So if a Christian, for example, were to say, you must accept me as a Muslim, we cannot be forced to do that because they don't subscribe to the creed of Islam.
I suppose
likewise, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm saying, I suppose the thing I'm also trying to get at is why there is this feeling of pressure to do that now.
I think, sadly, with the incidents that are on the increase, there is this growing expectation that one way of ensuring that these incidents do not continue is by accepting the Ahmadiyya community as part of the Islamic community, and perhaps that may help to stop these attacks and discrimination against the Ahmadiyya. What we are saying is, regardless of whether we accept them as part of Islam or not, it is wrong to discriminate against them. It is wrong to deny them their interpretation and their understanding of the theology, and it is wrong to harm them in any way whatsoever, to harm any place of worship, not just the Ahmadiyya, but of any religion, or even people of no religion. They are fellow human beings. We must be compassionate towards them as Islam requires. We have to be respectful. We should live together peacefully and in harmony, accepting that we will disagree on key and fundamental matters.
OK, let me bring Tahir Nasser into the conversation. You are from the Ahmadiyya community. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for joining our discussion. What do you make of the statement and Ibrahim's points?
So first of all, I'd also like to thank Ibrahim for coming on the show and condemning wholeheartedly the murder of Assad Shah, as all decent human beings should do. I think there are some serious issues, and I think they haven't yet been addressed in the conversation. I'd just like to bring them up.
Please.
So the first thing is that the good points about the statement were that they condemned the murder. They said that we should live in a pluralistic society and that we should respect one another's beliefs, and people should be free to live their lives without discrimination. All sounds good. As regards their desire not to call us Muslim, again, that is their decision. And if they don't want to call other people Muslim, they shouldn't be forced to. That's their theological position. The problem comes into issue with two things, one social and one theological. I'll address the theological first, because it's something that's really lying at the heart of this.
Okay.
The problem theologically is that, one, Ahmadi Muslims, we believe that the Prophet Muhammad is the last law-bearing messenger and prophet, and what that means is that he brought the last teaching for mankind, and that any prophet who now comes will only come to support his message. Now, this is something that Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims also believe in, because they believe in the return of Jesus as a non-law-bearing prophet within Islam. So that's one thing. The second point to make is that that's a very nuanced point, actually. And there's nothing in the basics of Islam that states that one has to believe that Muhammad is the last prophet, period, the last messenger, period. The kalama shahada that a person has to declare that to become a Muslim reads, there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. The word last doesn't exist. In the 5 pillars of Islam, there's no requirement, which form the basic actions a Muslim has to do to be a Muslim. There's no requirement for them to declare he is the last messenger. In the 6 articles of faith, there's no belief that he is the last messenger. So this idea is that he has to be declared as the last messenger in time, in sequence, is actually incorrect. And actually, they've actually changed what Islam is, so that they may oust and so that they may keep out Ahmadi Muslims from being Muslims. That's the theological aspect.
Okay, can I get on that point? I'll bring in your second point, but I want Ibrahim to respond to that first of all. Ibrahim?
Yeah, Tina, I'm sure this makes it very clear that the difference is absolutely theological, in that the Muslims believe that Jesus' return, peace be on him, will not be returning as a prophet, but he will be returning as a follower of Muhammad. And that is unanimously agreed upon by Muslims and Muslim theologians and scholarship. The second point about the finality of the Messenger Muhammad, peace be on him, the declaration of the faith, the Arabic formula, does not include the word final. However, we turn to the Quran for guidance on this, where the Quran has declared that Muhammad is the seal of prophethood. And our understanding is that that means that there will be no prophet to come after him. He was the final messenger, came with the final message. And that's where theologically we disagree with the Ahmadiyya position. Now, this is not a deliberate ploy to keep out particularly the Ahmadiyya community out of the fold of Islam. This has been the Islamic position since the introduction of Islam, if you like, to humanity through the Messenger Muhammad, peace be on him, and through the Quran.
Okay, Tahir?
Hi, can I just jump into that? Just before I get to the social aspect, I just would like to reply to that. So, actually, he's described two things which Ahmadis believe in, which is the extraordinary thing. So Ahmadis also believe that Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, was a follower of the Prophet Muhammad. We do believe he was a prophet, but non-Ahmadi Muslims, so Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, also believe when Jesus returns, he will be a prophet. So they're not mutually exclusive. So, for example, in Sahih Muslim, the Prophet Muhammad described Jesus when he comes back as Nabiullah 4 times in a single, one of the most authoritative traditions. That's the first point. The second point, in the Quran, yes, it is true, in the kalama, in the basic requirement to be a Muslim, it doesn't say final, as I pointed out, but in the Quran it says that he is the seal of the prophets. Now, we believe he is the seal of the prophets. We just have a different understanding to it. So what they're basically saying is, if you have a different understanding with regards to anything in the Quran, even if it's not required to be a Muslim, you will still be ousted from the basis from being called a Muslim. Now, that's my 2 points on what he's just said.
Okay.
As regard the social issues, which are more actually pressing in a kind of...
I think so, because we also don't want this to turn into an hour of talking about, theological points of view.
I agree.
Because, the Ahmadis... Well. Yeah, exactly. Ahmadis are banned from referring to themselves as Muslims by the Constitution of Pakistan. So, I don't think we're going to change anyone's mind overnight.
You've just hit to the main problem here, which they haven't addressed. The Muslim Council of Britain deliberately omitted from their statement. It's fine if they don't call us Muslim, that's up to them. The question is, are they happy with us referring to ourselves as Muslim? Are they happy with us calling our places of worship mosques? Are they happy with us propagating what we call Islam? That is the question. At the end of the day, if somebody doesn't regard me as a Muslim, okay, well, big deal. It doesn't end my world. If, however, like in Pakistan, like in Indonesia, they curtail your freedoms on the basis that you're not allowed to even self-identify as Muslim. Now, that's a thing that they've entirely left out of their statement in the Muslim Council of Britain. And I would invite Ibrahim to actually state that Ahmadis the Muslim Council of Britain is happy for the Ahmadis to self-identify as Muslims, and that the laws in Pakistan are unjust, and that if we have such attitudes towards that in this country, they will lead to more killings like we saw of the killing of Assad Shah.
Ibrahim, do you accept that?
Yeah, so just let me make it clear once again. Perhaps Tahir didn't hear me the first time round. The Muslim position with regard to the return of Jesus, peace be on him, is that he will return not as a prophet. He will have those credentials as having been a prophet when he was on this earth before he was lifted to the heavens. But when he returns, he will return as a follower of Muhammad, peace be on him. With regards to the persecution... Okay, that will
on the point of on the point of, are they free to? Are you happy with them to self-identify as Muslim?
Sure, I will come to that in a minute, Tina. But if you give me time, we can go into the discussion about Jesus. But that will require some time.
I've also got other opinions to bring in and other people to speak to. But yes.
So let me move on. Let me move on to the situation of the persecution of Ahmadis anywhere in the world, and I did specifically mention Pakistan and other places where there are majority Muslim communities. The persecution of Ahmadiyya communities is wrong. It is unacceptable. With regards to whether we are happy for them to self-identify themselves as Muslims, we have a position that whoever believes in the oneness of God and in the finality of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be on him, is Muslim, and we are happy for them to call themselves Muslim. Who does not subscribe to this belief, we don't recognize them as Muslim, though they may refer to them, they may describe themselves as Muslim.
Right, OK. I think we've cleared that point up. Tahir, can you make your point on the social aspect, and then I'll bring in Shailesh?
Very shortly. Well, I invite, and I thank what he said that we can self-identify as Muslims. There can be laws against us self-identifying. I would say again that his claim that Islam requires you to believe in the Prophet Muhammad as a last in time is completely theologically unsound. It doesn't have any basis in the Kalima, doesn't have any basis in the 5 pillars of Islam or the 6 articles of faith.
OK, the social aspect, though, so we're talking about you've linked that their position to a rise in attacks, or as you perceive it, it may be even more attacks like this happening in the future. Why is that?
I do, because, the person who killed him, he said...
I don't want to go back and talk about the case. Yeah, I know. Take specifically, yeah. But why do you think that is, generally?
Well, because at the end of the day, if you're creating divisions within your society and you're making out that this person is of our community, this person is not of our community, then people will naturally build walls and they won't be able to integrate as easily. I do think that people should be able to respect each other's differences, and if there are real differences, then that should be accepted.
Can you give us examples?
The main issue is actually that the majority of Muslims, not the majority, but a lot of Muslims in this country don't agree with Ibrahim. They don't agree that Ahmadi Muslims should be able to self-identify as Muslim. And that, I think, is the key problem. In terms of the social aspects of not integrating, well, I was the president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Students Association at University College London for 3 years, and the national president of the Ahmadiyya Muslim Students Association. And I found that the Sunni Muslim Society and the Shia Muslim Society refused, point blank, every single approach I made in any university to have any kind of dialogue on either topics of commonality or difference of belief. Now, they would approach the Atheist Society and chat with them. They'd approach the Christian Society, but Ahmadi Muslims were absolutely heretics and could not be spoken to because we don't want to give them a platform for their views. And that kind of attitude has to change. And the fact that the Muslim Council of Britain signed quite recently a charter of inclusivity among Muslims, but didn't invite those who also self-identify as Muslims, the Ahmadiyya Muslims, to sign that charter.
Yeah, well, I suppose, I was just going to say, the fact that you're having this conversation on this platform is surely a move forward, a step forward.
It is, but it would be nice if the leaders actually, because our leader, the Caliph Mirza Masroor Ahmad, is always happy to work together with anybody, for peace. And we regard Muslims, Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims, as Muslim. That's very important to put out there. Okay. We think that anybody who calls themselves a Muslim has the right to be called a Muslim.
Okay, one final point, Tahir, before I bring Shailesh in, who's been listening to the conversation we've been having so far. What you've talked about your own personal experience at university. What kinds of things have been happening to the Ahmadi community here in recent years?
Well, there are lots and lots of things. I don't want to necessarily bring them out because they might. I think they're coming out in other ways as well.
I mean, you don't need to name anybody, but just give us examples of the type of discrimination and persecution you face in the UK.
We have had hate leaflets distributed, calling for the social boycott of Ahmadis in Tooting. We have had hate leaflets stating that Ahmadis are to be killed under an Islamic state. After a 3-day period whereby they can be given repentance, in which they can repent, and if they don't, they should be killed. And this has all been propagated by an institution, an organisation called Khatm Nabuwwat, which means the finality of prophethood. And that's been imported here from Pakistan, and they have been chasing us, and they are the people who are responsible for killing Ahmadi Muslims in Pakistan. And they've gone all over the world, and they've come here as well. And they're a registered charity, nonetheless.
Okay.
And yet nobody's taking any action against them.
Okay, thank you. Can I want to say hello to Shailesh at this point. Shailesh, good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hello. You've heard lots of different aspects of this conversation. What's your response to the statement, the Muslim Council of Britain's response?
Well, I think it's pretty rich of them to turn themselves into victims of something that was quite horrific. A man's been killed. Why couldn't they simply make a statement which said that this is completely unacceptable, whatever your views are on Islam? It's wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Where does it end? There's also the Shias who are persecuted. And then the other man from the Muslim Council of Britain. I want to ask him, is ISIS's interpretation of Islam, is it acceptable to him? Because they are Sunni Muslims. So are they good Muslims then? So I want to know that. So, just because I didn't quite understand. It was too technical for me, just the discussion about Jesus coming back.
Yeah, we don't need to go into that. So we've had the theological discussion. That's always going to come up, Shailesh.
That's my point, you see, that here's a man's being killed, and some organization wants to play victim. I find that a bit risky.
Okay.
It's completely unacceptable.
So from your perspective, the part of the statement that says that they note that pressure's mounting to describe this community as Muslim and they shouldn't be forced to class Ahmadis as Muslims, you think that's the Muslim Council of Britain acting like the victim?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely wrong.
Okay.
It's wrong.
All right. Imam Yunus, I want you to give me your response to that. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I think, just to clarify, I think the Muslim Council of Britain did take out a statement on its own about the murder of Asad Shah and condemned it very clearly last week or the week before when it happened. So I think there was a separate statement that happened there. And this one, the statement which I've read recently, is in response to maybe the pressure which is building on the Muslim community to accept Ahmadis as Muslims. And I think, as Sheikh Ibrahim clarified, there is a theological difference between the Ahmadis and the Muslims, and that is why they do not consider them as Muslims.
But what about Shailesh's point at Shailesh is obviously offended at the fact that there is that statement in there about Muslims being forced to class them as Muslims.
But this is what I'm saying, that there's already a statement out there if you look on the MCB website.
Yeah, you're right.
So there's already a statement there. When Asad Shah was murdered, they condemned it very clearly. There was no other statement on there except condemnation of the act. And I think Sheikh Ibrahim alluded to the point that people feel that if you count them as Muslims, then these kind of incidents will not happen. But you can't, just because of incidents happening, and as tragic as they are, as condemnable as they are, you can't just change a theological position on the basis of an incident happening. It has to be on the theological basis that the movement should happen, not on the basis. So I think the pressure has been on the MCB. It seems like that they need to change their position and accept them as Muslims, and I think they've clarified that we respect everyone. There should be no discrimination against any groups. However, we shouldn't be pressured in accepting people as Muslims if they are not Muslims.
Shailesh?
Can I just say, no, it's not, if you truly believe in God, then none of you will judge anyone. It's for Allah, if I'm allowed to say Allah. It's for up to Allah to decide who is and who isn't a Muslim.
But then I wouldn't go around...
Hang on, I can't hear if you both talk after each other. Finish your point, Shailesh, then...
Yes, and I mean, what about the Shia Muslims? They have a different view to Sunni Muslims, so I don't know what the Muslim Council's views on Shias. Are they also not considered Muslims, or what? I mean, where does it end?
So the Muslim Council of Britain comprises of all different groups of Muslims, including Sunnis and Shias. So the Shias are involved in the Muslim Council of Britain. It's talking about what it is. It's a theological difference. And I think the audience we are speaking to, including yourself, Shailesh, won't understand the intricacies of the theological difference. And you found that discussion very technical, and many of the listeners will find it very technical, and it's been discussed over the last 100 years, that particular discussion.
But essentially, you can say, I mean, for people who don't understand, it's Ahmadis believing that Muhammad was not the last prophet and that he'll one day be succeeded. And that's the issue that you disagree with. That's
absolutely, it. Absolutely. That's it. And that's a fundamental tenet where the Shias, the Sunnis and Muslims from east to west in every single country have agreed that this tenet cannot be broken. There are other tenets which are not as crucial as this tenet, and therefore they will still be counted within the family of Islam. However, this tenet is so severe in terms of its implications that the Muslim jurists throughout the last 100 years have agreed that anyone who breaks this tenet will not be in the fold of Islam.
Imam, Yunus, I'm going to get a response from you, and then I'll bring in some of the messages that are coming in online.
That was me, Tina.
Yes.
That was my response.
Shailesh, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello. You see, I'm actually lost for words, and not usually. Usually I'm not. He just said that they've been debating this for so many years, and that there are certain aspects of Islam which the Shia don't follow but is acceptable, but this one isn't, about the Prophet and his finality and all that. You know what? It's not our job to sit in judgment. If you truly believe in a God, it's God's job to sit in judgment. Who are you? You can't say that, okay? And if Ahmadis want to call themselves Muslims, then nobody has a right to say to them.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there, Shailesh. Should Ahmadis have the right to call themselves Muslim? What do you think about that? If you are Muslim, should they be free to self-identify? Maybe if they were accepted as Muslims, you may believe that it would lead to less incidents and Ahmadis being persecuted less. Let me know what you think. What do you make of the Muslim Council of Britain's statement? Do you feel pressure, as is stated in the statement, as a Muslim, to class Ahmadis as Muslim? If you're from the Ahmadi community, maybe you've personally experienced discrimination, I want you to get in touch with me. A couple of messages that have come in. This one from Safraz. I believe in freedom of religion, but when the beliefs of Ahmadis are fundamentally contradictory to Islam, they cannot be classified as Muslims. Muslims telling other Muslims, whom among them is and isn't a Muslim. Get the irony? That's from Ahmed. And this from Lou on the text. I'm horrified that such a question exists. If you are truly religious, then you would accept any religion or belief as long as it was respectful to all humans. There is no way you can stand there and call yourself a Muslim if you don't respect other people's beliefs, especially when they are so similar to your own. This division smells of politics. That's from Jandani in Milton Keynes. Let me know what you think. You can call us. I'm Tina Dahili, and the question we've been talking about this morning, and I've been asking, is there too much pressure on Muslims to accept Ahmadis as Muslims? Now, it was almost a fortnight ago that Asad Shah, an Ahmadi shopkeeper from Glasgow, was killed. The man accused of murdering him said he carried out the killing because he believed Mr. Shah had disrespected Islam by claiming to be a prophet. We've been discussing the statement the Muslim Council of Britain has issued clarifying their relationship with the Ahmadiyya community. They've stated that followers have the right to live free from discrimination or persecution. They have absolutely condemned the attack, but they've also said that Muslims shouldn't be forced to class Ahmadis as Muslims if they do not wish to do so. What do you think about that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Some of the responses coming in on Twitter. This from Umar Salim. Should Jews be accepted as Christian because they may share some mutual beliefs? That's one. Dr. Irfan Malik. Only God Almighty can decide who is a Muslim. It's not the remit of the Muslim Council. And Nuaman says, the Muslim Council of Britain are right to say we don't consider them to be Muslim. I agree with the statement wholeheartedly. And also, there is pressure, otherwise we wouldn't discuss it repeatedly on your station. Thank you for sending in all of your opinions so far. Do keep them coming in. Iman Yunus, I want to come straight back to you first of all, before we speak to Ifti and Fi the Hack as well. If you've given any sermons or anyone in the Muslim community has come to speak to you in your position to talk to you about advice, what's your response been? If they've said to you, how should I view Ahmadis? Should I consider them as Muslim? How would you address that?
Yeah, so the question is, in terms of the Ahmadi community, if we look at the MCB statement, it's very clear. We shouldn't discriminate against them, but we don't consider them as Muslims because of the tenet which we discussed already, which is that the final prophet, the last prophet, was the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and there is no prophet to come after him.
But you personally, I know that's the statement, but you, as an imam, how would you address the issue in your community, and have you ever given a sermon and addressed it?
In my community, I myself and every other imam will say the same thing, that Ahmadis are not Muslims because they do not believe in this last tenet or this final messenger as being the final prophet of Islam, and therefore they cannot be considered as Muslims.
Okay, I want to bring Ifti.
Whether it's me or any other imam around the world, they will all say the same thing.
Okay, all imams will say the same thing. If you're an imam and you're listening, let me know if that is the case. Ifti, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
What do you think about the statement from the Muslim Council of Britain?
First of all, I haven't read the statement, and I've just tuned into your programme about 10 minutes ago.
Okay.
So obviously a very interesting discussion. I can't comment on the statement, but I can only say what I understand of the situation. Obviously, it goes without saying that a despicable act of killing the gentleman in Glasgow obviously needs to be condemned by everybody, Muslim or non-Muslim. And at the end of the day, everybody is entitled to hold their own beliefs, but nobody should be under pressure to accept somebody else's version of something if that doesn't fit in with their own beliefs.
But does that pressure exist? So basically, I'll recap.
I don't know if the pressure exists or not, but I don't think that the sad and tragic and despicable act of somebody being killed should be used as a tool to maneuver people into a position where they have to accept it just because somebody has fallen victim to some nutter who's went and committed that act. First of all, as a Muslim, I believe that, Islam does not tell anybody to persecute anybody because of their beliefs. That's the first thing, which is very clear. And I would try to maybe use an analogy that if somebody, we have an understanding of who is a vegetarian. Yeah. If somebody tomorrow turns around and changes the rules and says, well, if you occasionally have a bit of meat or a bit of fish, you can still count yourself as a vegetarian. I know it might sound a simplistic analogy, but then would you accept that person as a vegetarian?
Well, I don't think I'd be that offended, though. So many people would say if they choose to call themselves a vegetarian, and that's how they describe it, they're free to do that.
They're entitled to do that, but I don't have to accept that person's a vegetarian. Do you understand? From my viewpoint, from my perspective, I can decide what I want to believe or don't want to believe. And in terms of Ahmadis or Shias or any non-Muslims, other religions, I have friendships with all communities, and I want to maintain that. But I want to maintain my freedom to believe what I want to believe. And if people want to have the freedom to what they want to believe, we should not impinge on each other. We should not force that view on each other. That's my simplistic take on it.
Okay, and I'll come back to you, but I also want to introduce Fida into the conversation. Good morning.
Good morning.
You're an Ahmadi Muslim, aren't you?
That's correct, yeah.
What's your response to what's happened? Well, not what's happened, but the statement and the arguments around it.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I think it's a little bit sad. It's like what the gentleman has just said, that if you choose to believe it, you can believe it. If you choose, let's just don't persecute people when they choose to say that they're Muslims. And the problem is that when all of these actions and all of these words, they don't result in people behaving peacefully. That's the problem. Now, if as a result of the MCB saying, okay, if they want to say they're Muslims, let's accept them as Muslims, it stops people like the man who committed the murder against Mr. Shah. If it stops that from happening, then yeah, why can't the MCB do that?
Well, that's the point. That's the point of discussion, is will it stop those kinds of attacks? Will it stop persecution? Will it stop discrimination if Muslims simply accepted Ahmadis as Muslims?
Well, if the clerics if they state that Ahmadis are Muslims, then I'm pretty sure they will stop, because the only reason why people are committing these acts of persecution against Ahmadis, not just in this country. I mean, it's travelled abroad. It's crossed the borders. It's a state-sponsored persecution in Pakistan since the 1970s.
So you think there is a direct link between the refusal to allow Ahmadis to not even to actually, there's a difference there, because Ibrahim said he was happy for Ahmadis to self-identify as Muslim, but they shouldn't be forced to accept it that they are Muslims from his perspective.
I think more pressure has been done by the media on the MCB rather than any MDs to say, oh, MCB, please accept us as Muslims, etc., etc. I think as MDs, we're quite comfortable and quite confident to call ourselves Muslims. But if I mentioned before, if in the end it can stop people from persecuting people who don't have the knowledge exactly of what the Ahmadi belief is, then yeah, of course. If someone, if the person who murdered Mr. Shah, his view was that, Mr. Shah does not believe in the Prophet Muhammad being the final prophet, or he does not believe in Islam, that's why I've killed him. But that's wrong. How is that? Someone has taken advantage of his poor state of mind.
Yeah, but isn't that the same argument that you could use for, I don't know, anything else? So you could say somebody was watching, that's his belief, but that doesn't represent everybody. All Muslims, does it? Obviously it's not, because people aren't going around killing each other, are they?
Well, they are. That's the problem. if it's a state-sponsored persecution that happens in countries like Pakistan, Indonesia, that same.
But here in the UK.
Well, it's happened already, isn't it? I'm afraid it might just be a domino effect now.
Yeah, go on. Is that Ifti?
Yeah, I think this is being made into a black and white issue, and there's grey areas there that are not being discussed and not being acknowledged, and I think it's very, very unfair. I agree partly with what the gentleman says, but first let me make a couple of things clear. In terms of who an Ahmadi is, for me the jury's still out. I don't know, because I get conflicting views from people who I've come across, who I've had acquaintance with, who are Ahmadi, who are giving me different interpretations of what the faith actually is. So I'm still sort of trying to figure it out for myself. But in terms of what the gentleman said, that this is state-sponsored persecution, I don't think this particular act, you could say that it's a state-sponsored thing. It's the act of a crazed individual who's took it upon themselves to take their beliefs to an extreme and found somebody else's beliefs offensive. Where Mr. Asad Shah is concerned, there are some issues here which are not being discussed. The fact that Mr. Asad, it is claimed that...
No, I don't want to talk about the case, though, because it's an ongoing case, so we can't talk about it.
I think the case is being utilised by the speaker who just spoke before as an example of how persecution takes place. But I think it's important to acknowledge that what Mr. Asad Shah said doesn't sit comfortably with the Ahmadi community, parts of the Ahmadi community.
Okay, we need to... I know, but it's the case that we can't talk about, okay? So we can't talk about the detail of it because we don't know. But this idea...
I'm just going by, Tina, what's available on YouTube.
Yeah, but you can't go... Okay, it's an ongoing criminal case, so we can't discuss it on air.
The discussion...
But the discussion around it, I hear you. Feeder?
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. If we take Mr. Shah's case out of let's put it to the side, right? I mean, I've grown up in MD. I've lived in the majority South Asian areas as well, and from a young age, I've experienced some sort of, persecution. Some of it physical, some of it has led to, physical altercation. Some of it just verbal. Some of it people, slandering my parents or my mother in the public, slandering my family in the public. Now, this is a free country. Now, this is obviously, if you're talking about, it's not state-sponsored persecution, it was in the country that we're from, Pakistan. But now that we've come into this country, there's certain organizations that have literally translated their views onto society here. Now, that's what we're trying to say. We live in a democratic country. We live in a country which, promotes freedom of expression, freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Now, why is this happening? Why has this happened? It's the same reason why extremism occurs. It goes, this is a form of extremism. And it's these point of views that are destroying the minds of people about Ahmadis. Like the gentleman, Ifti, I think his name is, he just mentioned that, even I don't know what the Ahmadis believe. Like, brothers, come down, speak to us, honestly.
So maybe it's an ingrained thing. There's also a question about if you're Muslim, you just know that you don't accept Ahmadis, even if you're not sure yourself what it means. Ifti?
Yeah, I'm replying to that.
Yeah, go on.
I said I've had conflicting descriptions of what Ahmadi is from people in the Ahmadi community. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out and trying to learn, and I'm trying to sort of find out what the actual issues are. But what I can say is to say that if Ahmadis are accepted by the majority of the Muslim community as Muslims, somehow that's going to take away persecution. That doesn't make sense, because Shias are accepted as Muslims. Does that stop Shias from being persecuted? There are other Sunni sects that are each other's throats, and they all recognize each other as Muslims, but there has been murders between those as well. There is no guarantee just by the Muslim Council of Britain or any other organisation saying, we accept Ahmadis as part of mainstream Islam, then that somehow the persecution has gone away. I think that's the wrong kind of pressure that is being built up.
Okay.
What should be promoted is acceptance that people have the right to have their own individual beliefs, and tolerance and respect for that.
Ifti, thank you. I want to bring Kamar in, who's been listening to this conversation. You're not a Muslim, but you have a comment on this. Good morning.
Yes, I'm not a Muslim, but I'm proud to say my family is from Punjab, India, and that's where this community started. And I, although not a Muslim or Ahmadi, I feel very proud of that, because what emanates from this community, and I've got some friends from the community for over many years, is love and peace. I think they're the perfect example of Islam. And I think, that's the first thing I want to make on a personal level. And the other thing, the Muslim Council of Britain, by the definition, their title, they're not defining what type of Muslim, Sunni, Shia, whatever. They're saying Muslim Council of Great Britain, and even shouldn't that be all inclusive? I mean, surely that even the name they're projecting, yeah.
But they don't accept Ahmadis as Muslims. Is the point? So they Muslim Council of Britain, as we heard Ibrahim say, has Shia and Sunni Muslims.
To be honest, if someone thinks there's peace and shoes and money, they're living in a dream world. There's butchering going on a daily basis all over the world. We have a Shia mosque being built in the West Midlands, and they have dared not put up a sign. I have sent photos to your station, whether you wanted to bring that as a topic, but you haven't done so. But this is a fear what minorities are living in, not just Muslim, other faiths as well. There's an incredible fear that these thugs have gone over to Syria and Iraq, will arrive on our shores, and they'll be targeting all the minority communities. And we need to stand up, and the Muslim Council of Great Britain should be ashamed of themselves.
OK, Kamar, thank you very much. If you agree with Kamar's points, get in touch, let me know. Nasser, I want to speak to next. Nasser, good morning.
Morning, Tina. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, fantastic discussion, I have to say. And thank you for giving us a platform to discuss this important issue, I think. I just wanted to ask one of the imams or the spokesmen.
They're not on the line, I'm afraid. No, they could, but give me a point. What would you have wanted to ask them? What's the key thing for you?
What the sort of effect or how he feels the repercussions of actually calling us a Muslim would have on his community, and whether he thinks it would be a bad one, whether he thinks it would affect his relationship with God. And also whether, I wanted to, try and detach that as far away as possible from the sort of theological arguments and just sort of, focus that on his sort of personal relationship and, why it's so, why
it's so unacceptable.
Why it's so unacceptable, exactly. Another thing I wanted to ask him was whether he agreed with the legislation, particularly in Pakistan, and whether he feels that sort of legislation whereby Ahmadi Muslims are declared to be non-Muslim and where they're not allowed to be practicing their faith in public, whether they should. He agrees whether that should be, something that should be practiced across most majority Muslim countries, or whether in most majority Muslim communities, whether they feel that it's if communities identify as being Muslims, does he feel that they should be allowed to do so?
Yeah.
Also, I just wanted to elaborate on some of the other caller's point. I think it was 2 phone calls away when he was talking about, some of the personal experiences that he said. I mean, I've looked at a lot of the information that is out there, particularly from the Khatam and the book. What's it called?
Yeah. Do you know what, Nasser? You know what I'm going to get you to do? We're going to continue this, actually. So I'm going to get you to put your points to somebody, and you can join us. The discussion we've been having since 10 a.m. is about Muslims accepting Ahmadis. Is there too much pressure on Muslims to accept Ahmadis as Muslims? That's what I've been asking you. Lots of different opinions coming in. A couple of responses on Facebook. This one from Sab. No one has the right to call someone non-Muslim. It's between Allah and man. People should be more worried about how they live their daily lives, which is against the teachings of Islam. Osman says there's no pressure. It's simple. They can't be accepted as Muslims, and they never will be. End of. Ahmadis are human beings, and they should be treated as humans. No one has the right to classify anyone as Muslims or non-Muslims. No world institution should preach this hatred against any community. Religion is something very personal between God and human. It is up to God to decide. That one's from Mohammed. Thank you, Mohammed. Lou, the Muslim Council is encouraging segregation amongst religion. Surely that goes against the ethics of this multicultural society. And I'll finish on this one before I go to Naz. A murder under any circumstances is completely unacceptable, regardless of reason. Preservation of life is paramount as human beings, irrespective of religion. Religions such as Christianity have different sects as Protestants and Catholics. Everyone has the freedom to believe as they please. There should be, a bit of the text is missing, no difference, irrespective perspective of the reason for a civilised, tolerant society. Agree, disagree, let me know. Naz, what do you think about all those responses?
Okay, I didn't catch most of them.
Okay, fine.
Okay, about the killing part and stuff, I completely agree. I think killing anyone is wrong. I think persecuting anyone for any reason is wrong. I'm completely against killing of anyone. The main reason I called in was because, I'm against what is being asked, about Ahmadis being cast as Muslims. I'm against that. But Ahmadis as people, I know a few Ahmadis. I do business with Ahmadis. I love them to pieces. Would I say to other people, do business with them? Yeah. I think anyone with a moral compass is a great person. Anyone who holds a religion, a value, a faith, has great importance on this earth, and you can trust them with anything.
Okay.
You really can. Now, but when it comes to asking 1.5 billion people, will they be prepared to accept someone else in, or would they be prepared to let someone else in? It goes against like our first kalma, yeah, of there's no other prophet. Now,
okay.
Okay,
go on.
Our Quran is said to be written. It says the word down from God, but nobody's ever asked, why don't we change William Shakespeare's book, Romeo and Juliet, and make it about Romeo and Roberto? No one's ever asked, why can't we make it for homosexuals to be more accepted? Why can't we change Harry Potter and make him black or make him Asian?
Okay, very different examples there, Naz, thank you. But listen...
You know what I mean? Yeah. But those are books done by humans.
But listen, I want you to talk to Nasser, because Nasser has these questions. He wants to know, and I'll let you ask yourself, Nasser, why is it such an issue if Ahmadis call themselves Muslim? In fact, Nasser, you asked the question to Naz.
Yeah, hi there, Naz. Assalamu alaikum. Yeah, I want to know why you think it is such a... I want to sort of step away from this sort of theological debate as they discussed it slightly before. But what is the issue for you to see, or for some of the people in your group, to see or to recognise us as a Muslim? What effect is that you personally on your spirituality and your relationship with God?
Okay, at the moment, the Ahmadis themselves don't, as people, you don't. All the Ahmadis I've known so far, lovely people. But, see, now, when we got told, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, we got told that Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet. And I believe we got told that
But that's again a theological debate. The thing is that, I don't want to go too much into it, but La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, there's no carbon in that. There's no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger, but carry on, sorry.
Okay, sorry. I'm not all clued up. I'm not extremely religious. I'm not, so I don't know a lot of what all these big words and fancy words. I speak as a human. Yeah, but I believe that we were told that, and there was important significance placed on that, because before, I'm sure you agree as well that many prophets came before. One of those prophets being Jesus, and now when these prophets came before, people manipulated the words of prophets beforehand. People then use that to their advantage. If you look in Hindu scripture, you find stuff, the word Allah mentioned in that as well. So maybe those Hindu gods once upon a time were actual prophets of God, but it just got changed and they got made into gods and so forth. Jesus is now considered a trinity. He's considered...
Okay, let's not get into the... I want to stay, because we've talked about this for so long.
So Jesus is considered... And so I think, for me, what scares me is the fact that if important was made on don't let anyone change the religion, and if we say that another prophet came afterward, we're changing it. We're changing something.
The thing is, the idea is, the interpretation of religion is there. I don't know how many different sects of religion there are. So of Islam, there are. I think there's 73 sects of Islam. So to say that each one of those people are changing it, I think is a little bit, to say, because there are going to be different interpretations. And 1.6 billion Muslims, probably 1.6 billion different opinions about the intricacies of the actual religion itself. So And I was going to mention something else. You said that you've been led to believe what you've been told. I'm just going to ask you another question, if I may. I would like to ask you, I mean, do you believe that Islam means peace, right? Or do you believe Islam means peace?
Yeah, no, of course I do. Of course I believe.
What do you think? So if I might ask you, would you... Tolerance for one another, is that a peaceful thing?
Yes.
Yeah. No. One more question. So is it more tolerant? Sorry, is it more tolerant? Is it more tolerant or less tolerant to accept someone as your brother or not? Which is more tolerant? To accept someone as your brother or to accept them not as your brother?
So let me put it this way.
Probably to be nicer to someone. It is, yeah. I understand that. I mean, in all fairness, everybody we should class everyone as a brother and sister, regardless of faith.
Okay, let me ask you both a question then. Nas, would you pray with Nasser?
If he, I don't know, that's a good question, to be fair. That's a really good question. If he was in my mosque, I would let him in. Of course I would.
Nasser, would you pray with Nas?
I would pray. I would lead the prayer, but because obviously some of the issues that they might have with my prophet, and some of the ways I feel a little bit uncomfortable. There was something that I wanted to draw attention to in terms of some of the actual information that people are given in terms of the propaganda and the way that we're actually being portrayed through in some mainstream mosques, I believe. If you have a look, I mean, there are some things that people say in terms of how we distort the image of Islam and how and how such hate is actually spilled out to our prophets. To someone who regards me, if I'm praying with someone who's a Muslim, unfortunately, I don't know what they might be thinking about me or my prophet.
Okay, Nasser, stay there. I want to bring...
I mean, in all fairness, I've never heard in a mosque anything ever be said bad about Ahmadis.
Okay.
If it's said bad about Ahmadis, it's probably said within groups of friends. And so I think argument of mosque are inciting hatred. I'm
sorry. I take that back. I don't want to make any broad generalizations or make it. I want to take that back. I'm just saying some of the conferences that I've seen, as I say, some of the propaganda that I've received. And some of the stuff that I've seen, particularly in my hometown. I come from Tooting, where there was a large hate campaign against the Ahmadi Muslims. As I say, some of the leaflets that were put on businesses boycotting our business.
All right, Nasser, I'm going to, just because I want to bring in Nazli as well, I believe the first female voice on the conversation this morning. Very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Hiya. Where do you stand on this? What's your opinion?
I think my opinion is very much about, what does Islam tell us? Islam tells us there's no compulsion in religion, and that actually freedom of conscience, the choice to actually decide what we believe in and to choose whichever path we want to go on, whether it's Islamic, whether it's Christian or Jewish, that Islam actually gives us that. That is inherent in our religion, and it's actually sacrilege to say that we can't give people that choice. And I think that, the whole issue now rising in Britain actually comes from places like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, places that have constitutionally declared Ahmadi Muslims as non-Muslim. And therefore even saying Assalamu alaikum or carrying the Quran or even calling your mosque a mosque is imprisonable. You are an imposter. You're acting as a Muslim. And actually, these things have now been enshrined in constitution, which makes it a criminal offence. And, this is what people now from those countries who are now residing in these countries are bringing that hatred with them. And I think what we need to remember is that actually Britain has more Islamic values than perhaps our own countries care to even subscribe to. And we mustn't allow these hatred. Now, whatever our beliefs are, and we can go on, on a scholarly basis, we can go on, pick up the Quran, we can give interpretations of things, whether someone's a prophet or not. And, by the way, the kalma, la ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah actually means, that, Muhammad is a messenger of Allah, and that there is no God but Allah. It doesn't say he's the last prophet. It says that he is the messenger of Allah. And these misinterpretations are what are causing these hatreds. Now, if somebody gets up and says to you, so-and-so says this, and you don't even go and read and research it, it is going to start creating, it's like racism, actually, where people, believe that refugees are flooding the country and therefore we should all hate refugees, but we don't actually know the reason why these people are coming.
All the numbers, how many are coming in, how many are leaving.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the same concept, and I'm really sad that, this is something that instead of uniting and saying, we actually need to defeat the real evil that's within Islam at the moment, and that is this terrible message of terrorism. There is a verse in the Quran that says, killing of one innocent life is the killing of the whole of humanity. Now, where has that message gone? That is such a powerful message. We don't hear anything about it. It's fine to declare, Ahmadis as imposters and non-Muslims or whatever, but what about the battle against the real evil here? And none of that is being resonated here. And my disappointment is that I've grown up, I was born and bred in this country, I have grown up, I see everybody as equal. Hindus, Christians and Sikhs and everybody in my religion have to be protected. And every religion, whether they believe in one God or they have many gods, there is the Quran orders us to respect everybody's faith, because today you can turn around and call somebody else's religion this, that and the other, and tomorrow they will call your religion that. And these are the kind of nuances we don't want to encourage, that we insult each other's religions and then we start causing hatred, because it starts with an insult and then it turns into hatred and then it turns into murder. And I think anybody who can sit on your panel and condone not accepting people as Muslims, I think they've got to really go back and decide who is going to be the decider of this.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, it is God. If you believe in a God, when I go into my grave, I will be judged on my deeds, my actions, and I could be a Christian who did the best things in the world, and I could enter this heaven that we're all aiming to reach if we believe in it.
And I will let you have the last word on that, Nazli. Thank you very much for getting in touch with us, and for everybody else who's called in, texted in, emailed and left your messages on social media.